Good evening. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Thank you. Welcome to the choir. We're off to an organ off to this tonight. We have a special presentation. This is Nancy Thompson-Lloyd. She lives in the Levita, Colorado area. She has a Master of Arts Piano Performance and Pedagogy from the Denver University Milan School of Music. She has studied organ at Denver University with Phyllis Tremmel and James Bradley. She has a college certification, American Guild Organist. And she's been a church musician for many years. She's also done special convocations and commencement organist for the Colorado School of Mines for over 20 years. She's a collaborative pianist accompanist with the Colorado Wind Ensemble and performances and recitals on the Sunday Christian Vocal Arts Ensemble in Buffalo County. She's also a piano tutor and repairer, a collaborative pianist and accompanist coach, piano, keyboard, and organ instructor. And most importantly, for her and for us, she loves Colorado. Nancy, please.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy Thompson. Just to let you all know, to give you some perspective, this building was completed 24 years after the Civil War in 1889. Just puts it in perspective. The organ, to our knowledge, was shipped into Trinidad in about 1922, brought from the railroad station to the present location by horse and buggy. It's an SV organ, 1922. I think my brother Ron would attest to this. I've never heard this organ played like this, ever. We had an older man that played named Albert Moses, did a fine job, but it was always Jewish music concerning services. Never ever heard it played with such feeling and good. This is a real change, and you guys were here for something that's, to my knowledge, I guess in 60 years, it's never happened. I'd like to welcome you all to be here. We're fortunate to have Lennick and Rabbi Lennick. Rabbi Lennick is director of the New Mexico Jewish Federation in Albuquerque. And again, welcome to all of you. Would you please silence your phones? And for those of you, we are Zooming this, by the way. And for those of you in the Zoom audience, should there be some technical difficulties, please stay tuned. We'll have everything going. And again, thank you for being here. It certainly does my heart good, and I hope it does yours too. Rabbi Lennick?
Thank that was music. Now we're going to dive, so to speak, with music and bring in this most unusual of New Year's. So welcome everyone, it's wonderful to be with you. This is a special year for me. This is the 36th year of my life as a rabbi. But I like to say in some ways I graduated from the rabbi in the work I do with the Jewish Federation, because I like to see Judaism thrive everywhere. Every type of Judaism, every movement of Judaism, every kind of synagogue, every kind of Jewish gathering, I like to see it all thrive. People ask me, well, what kind of Judaism do you observe? And my answer is, we conform a servant box. A little bit of this, a little bit of that, and we're all united, we all bring our own different experiences. So, some of the music may sound familiar, some of it may sound new, some of the readings you may have heard all your life, but hopefully this will just be an eclectic, embracing time that will bring us all together. So I want to say first something about the high holidays. Separate from the unique circumstances of this particular year in the age of COVID-19. There was a guy who used to fly a plane. He was a pilot. And he had a country house. And every weekend he would drive up to the country house. It was located on a beautiful lake. And he decided, why don't I just try to fly up there instead of schlepping in my car every weekend? So he had his plane equipped with pontoons, so he could land the plane right on the lake, right in front of his little house. And he was all excited because he wasn't going to have to do that schlep. And so he had the first trip up to the country with his newly equipped plane, and as he had been flying his plane up there many, many times because there was an airport about 30 miles away, and he would go and fly and land at the airport, go and fly and land at the airport, or drive his car. So he puts on these, things so he can land in the water, and he goes up with his wife, and they're flying up for the first time, and he's so excited. And he's like, without thinking about it, he doesn't go to the lake. Out of habit, he goes to the airport. He goes to the airport. So anyway, he's got pontoons on his plane, and his wife is like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You can't land at the airport. He pulls up and goes, oh my gosh, I don't know what I was thinking. Phew, thank goodness for that. And he flies back around and he lands on the lake, right in front of his house. And he says to his wife, that was not the stupidest thing I've ever done. And then he opened the door to the plane and he stepped out and fell right in the water. Forgetting that there was not a runway. The holidays are kind of like that guy in the plane. It's about changing habits, changing attitudes, learning new ways maybe to have a better ride during this lifetime. And the high holidays do it in two parts. The first part of the holidays start on Rosh Hashana, and for 9 days, we are commanded to work out our issues with each other. 9 days. It's not so easy to work stuff out with human beings. So we have the 10 days of awe, 9 of them focus on how we can make life better together amongst ourselves and with the people we love. 1 day at the end, it shifts to the relationship we have with God on Yom Kippur. So listen, it takes 1 day to work it out with God, 9 days to work it out with each other. Here's a lesson. It means there's the work for us to do. And the most important part of the holidays is really not being here. This just sets the tone for what's supposed to happen when we leave here. And that is to make teshuvah. Teshuvah means to change direction, to change our attitudes, maybe adjust our priorities and make for a good, better year ahead. So I'm going to ask you now to open your Machzor to light the candles, page 50, if you would, in the gates of repentance. And we have some special people coming up to light the candles. Situated. This is the main melody for Rosh Hashana. Ya la 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 la, la la la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la. Ya. Let's try that together. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la. Ya. Lishana Tova Tikate. Lishana Tova Tikate. Lishana Tova Tikate. With the setting of this evening's sun, united with Jews of every place and time, we proclaim a new year of hope. May the light of the divine shine forth to lead us, to show us the good we must do, the harmony we must create. Let the fire we kindle be for us a warming flame, whose brightness shows us the path of life. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'ha'adivneh ha'adivneh Shabbat v'shalom. Blessed is the eternal power that inspires us to kindle the light of Shabbat and Yom Tov. Blessed is the source of life and light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Shechayanu v'kiyamanu v'nidiyanu. Blessed is the eternal power of the universe, for giving us life, for sustaining us, and enabling us to reach this season and new year. And let us say together, Amen.
Amen.
So good Yom Tov, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. And we turn to page 51. Please note when we see the italics, everyone's invited to join together.
What? No.
In the twilight of the vanishing year, we lift up our hearts in thanksgiving. Our souls are stirred by the memory of joy as the new year begins. We are sustained by love and kindness, comfort comforted in times of sorrow, find happiness in our homes and gladness with our friends. We lift up our hearts in thanksgiving as the new year begins. As the new year begins, our spirit rises in grateful song. But there are dreams that came to naught, and times when we refuse to dream. These, with much regret, we now remember as the new year begins. As the new year begins, contrition fills our thoughts. Some of our days were dark, grief, many a tear furrowed our cheeks. Alas, for the tender ties that were broken. We look back with sorrow as the new year begins. As the new year begins, tears well up within us. Yet we look ahead with hope, giving thanks for the daily miracle of renewal, for the promise of good to come. May this Rosh Hashana, birthday of the world, be our day of rebirth into life and peace, serenity and safety as the new year begins. As the new year begins, so it is reborn with us. It says in the Torah, "B'chodesh hashvi'i b'echad b'chodesh, yeh lachem shabton, zivro truah mikra kodesh, kol melechet avodah lo ta'asu." In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, there shall be a sacred assembly, a cessation from work, a day of commemoration proclaimed by the sound of the shofar. And as we welcome the new year formally, I ask you to please stand if you are able. Tiku Racho, Racho Shofar, Bechesed Hayom V'Kenu, Yichol Yisrael, Yishma Elohei Yaakov. יהי רצון לפניך אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתכבד לשמנו ועל כל בת ישראל את השנה הזאת. שנת 5,781, בחיים ולשלום, לששון ולשמחה, לישועה ולנחמה, ונאמר אמן.
Amen.
May this new year, called 5,781, bring to us in the whole house of Israel life and peace, and joy and exaltation, redemption and comfort. May this new year bring us life and peace, joy and exaltation, redemption and comfort. Amen. Please remain standing. And we continue with Baruch, page 54. Baruch et Adonai HaNevorah. Baruch Adonai HaNevorah. Praise be the Lord our God, ruler of the universe, whose word brings on the evening. With wisdom you open heaven's gates, with understanding you make the ages pass, and the seasons alternate. Your will controls the stars as they travel through the sky. Creator of day and night, you roll away light from darkness, and darkness from light. You cause day to pass and bring on the night. The Lord of hosts is your name. O living and eternal God, rule us always to the end of time. Blessed is the Lord, whose word makes the evening fall. Unending is your love for your people, the house of and mitzvot, laws, and precepts have you taught us. Therefore, O Lord our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and rejoice in your Torah and mitzvot forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life and the length of our days. O may your love never depart from our hearts. Blessed are you, O Lord, who love your people Israel. We continue now with the watchword of our faith. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Hamutah Leolam Vaed. Tonight we continue with the English translation of the Yom from Deuteronomy chapter 6, and we join together. You shall love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your strength, with all your being. Set these words which I command you this day upon your heart. Teach them faithfully to your children. Speak of them in your home and on your way, when you lie down and when you rise up. Bind them as a sign upon your hand. Let them be a symbol before your eyes. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Be mindful of all my mitzvot and do them. So shall you consecrate yourselves to your God. I, the Lord, am your God, who led you out of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord, am your God. Continue on page 57. All this we hold to be true and sure. You alone are our God. There is none else, and we are his dear people. You are our King, delivering us from the hand of oppressors, saving us from the fist of tyrants, doing wonders without number, marvels that pass our understanding. You give us our life. With your help, our people has survived all our oppressors. You did wonders for us in the land of Egypt, miracles and marvels in the land of Pharaoh. You led your people Israel out forever to serve you in freedom. When your children witnessed your power, they extolled you and gave you thanks. Freely they acclaimed you king, and full of joy, Moses and all Israel sang this song. Turn to page 59. Cause us, O eternal God, to lie down in peace, and raise us up this honor to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. And for your name's sake, be our God. Shield us from hatred and plague. Keep us from war and famine and anguish. Subdue our inclination to evil. O God, our guardian and helper, our gracious and merciful ruler, give us refuge in the shadow of your wings. Guard our coming and our going, and now and always we have life and peace. Blessed are you, O Lord, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all Israel, and over Jerusalem. Amen. And since this is Shabbat, we add the song of Yeshabru. Yeshabru, et Hashem, so let Hashem let go to Yeshabru, et Israel, et Hashem, so let Hashem let go to Then you and Israel, until wish to let Israel, let Hashem, so let Hashem let go to Sheshet Yamim, Asanai, et Hashamayim, et Yeshamru, Israel, et Hashem, so et Hashem, let go to the return. Shabbat Vayinafash, Shabbat Vayinafash, Shabbat Vayinafash. Teshavru, Tene Yisrael, et Hashem, so et Hashem, let go to turn to page 60. Yitzchak, Shemei Rabo, Yamad Yivrachem Yamlechachom V'chayecho, Uvyomecho Chayim B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'al Yisrael Yinu Amen. Yesh Rabba B'Vona, Le'olam Olamei Olamayno, Yiparo, Yishkabo, Yipari Tamam Yidasei, Yitagal Yitalem Yitabal, Shemei Kudisha, Lelo, Uko Birchata Bishirata, Tushbechata Menechemata, Tamiran Yama, Lelelu, Amen. Please rise, please stand if you are able, as we continue with the Aliyah. We will begin first in Hebrew on page 60. We'll then read the English on the top of page 61, and then we'll join together singing the song. Atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Adonai Adon 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 El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Yekoleh HaKol, Zocher Chasmei Avot, U'Mevigula Yevnehem, Lemach Shemo B'Yahava. Lord, you are our God, even as you were the God of Abraham and Sarah, the God of our fathers and mothers, the God of all the ages of Israel. They are our past, as we are their future. We recall their vision and pray for the strength to keep it alive. Help us, O God, and shield to keep their faith. O God, shield of Abraham, Sarah's help, and all the generations hereafter, as shield our God. Sacharei Lechai, Lechafetz Bachai, Lechat Veinu, L'Sefer HaChaim, Le'ma'alcha, Elohim Chai. Sacharei Lechai, Lechafetz Bachai, Lechat Veinu, L'Sefer HaChaim, Le'ma'alcha, Elohim Chai. Never zero shall again, look at time again, remember us unto life, O Sovereign, the lights in love. And inscribe us in the book of life, O God of love. We continue now responsibly at the bottom of page 61. Love is the thread that binds our lives in a lasting fabric, which time shall thread. Which time shall thread, but only to be woven by each generation. Each generation will lift the fallen to their feet and hold them as they learn to walk. And as they learn to walk, the sickness of our time will be healed by those who drink deep from ancient wells of truth. From ancient wells of truth, they will draw strength to keep faith with those who sleep in us. We praise the source of life and power who has implanted within us immortal yearning and divine hopes. Please be seated. Turn to page 65. And we say the prayer for the shot hello, a prayer for this day, at the top of the page. On this day of remembrance, we pray for awareness. Let love and compassion grow upon us, and goodness be our daily care. This day may we find well-being. This day may we discover the eternal strength that abides among us. This day may we be helped to a life that is whole. Amen. We turn to page 67. Continuing responsibly in the middle of the page. Words there are, and prayers, but justice there is not, and not yet peace. The prophet said, in the end of days, the Lord shall judge between the nations. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into bows. Although we must wait for judgment, we may not wait for peace to fall like rain upon us. The teacher said, those who have made peace in their house, it is as though they have brought peace to all the world of Israel, indeed to all the world. Peace will remain a distant vision until we do the work of peace ourselves. If peace is to be brought into the world, we must first bring it to our families and communities. Psalmist said, seek peace and pursue it. Be not content to make peace only in your own household. Go forth and work for peace, wherever men and women are struggling in its cause. We're going to pause now for silent meditation, expression of prayer of your own heart, a quiet time of supplication, and we're not going to rush it. Shalom Rahav, Al Yisrael, Tasiyu, Le'olam. Shalom Rahav, Al Yisrael, Tasiyu, Le'olam. Ki atahu, Yerechato, Lechol Hashem. Ki atahu, Yerechato, Lechol Hashem. Shalom Rahav, Al Yisrael, Tasiyu, Le'olam. Shalom Rahav, Al Yisrael, Tasiyu, Le'olam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael. B'chol עת ובכל שעה ישלומך. Shalom Rahav, Al Yisrael, Tasiyu, Le'olam. Shalom Rahav, Al Yisrael, Tasiyu, Le'olam. We turn out to page 69. We come to the prayer of Avinu Malkeinu. The prayer will really dramatize standing before God. Now I'm going to tell you my personal belief about this. I feel like I stand before God every single minute and every single working moment of my life. And in some ways, recognizing that is more important than the prayer we're about to say. Just recognizing that we need to live in this world with humility and not haughtiness, with a recognition of the things we don't know versus a preoccupation of what we think we do know. Living in a world with a kind of what I call a healthy, doubtful, faithful attitude. Because I believe at the heart of Judaism is the kind of careful intention to preserve the mystery of God. So when we sing Avinu Malkeinu with the grandiosity of the prayer, Judaism would tell us, but don't take it too seriously. I'll tell you a story, a true story. When I was a young rabbi, brand new rabbi, first congregation I served at Lennick in Denver. Way back in the day, my good friend Stephen Foster, and being the new young rabbi, I got to do a lot of these stuff that young rabbis do. So I was invited to be a Passover Seder at the Episcopal Cathedral in Denver. It was a model Seder, and they prepared a nice meal for 150 people, and I was, young and all ready to go, and showed up there, and we had this model Seder, and we did all the rituals, and I really was the only Jewish person there, and it was well appreciated, right? As model Seders often are. And then, toward the end of the meal, a person walked into the room dressed in very fancy clergy vestments. I thought, well, maybe this must be the rector of the church. And this gentleman walked in, had 2 attendants, and walked over to me, and I was introduced. Rabbi Lennick, we'd like you to meet the Archbishop of Canterbury. True story. True story. The Archbishop of Canterbury, who had been in the United States, was in Denver, I don't know for how long, a day or two, and came to the Episcopal Cathedral that afternoon. Just happened to be that afternoon. Now, I admit this to you, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know he was essentially like the Pope of the Church of England. I don't know if you know, I came to the temple, the rabbi talked about Christianity. No, that's not the point. We sat down together, and he said, could we have a little dialogue, an interfaith dialogue? We did, in front of the group. And toward the end of the conversation, I felt like, because someone whispered in my ear who this really was. I asked the question. And I said, so what's the thing with this Jesus thing? Is it like all human, all divine, 50-50, 60-40? What is it? And his answer was profound. It was one of the most profound things I've ever heard spoken. He said, that is the mystery, and God forbid we ever figure it out. Because if we figure it out, people will think they have God in their pocket. And the whole purpose of faith is that it's not certainty. Faith is not certainty. People who think they know it are missing the point. And then he looked at me and he said, Rabbi, you should know this. We learned it from you. We learned it from you. We learned about the mystery of God. We learned about preserving the mystery around God's essence, God's presence. And that's why I share this with you, because there are parts of my holiday liturgy, and I guess after 35 years I could say this. Something that's really over the top. Like tomorrow, we're a time to look at who shall live and who shall die. It's over the top. It intends to get our attention. It doesn't intend to frighten us. It's not intended to be literal. It's supposed to remind us of our humility before the one and only, ultimately, greatest mystery and greatest unifying principle of all existence. So tonight, we'll stand for a moment and we'll share this wonderful historical, very important prayer. But better, sometime tomorrow on Rosh Hashana, when you're walking down the street or you're sitting in your chair or you're in your yard, look up to our being our King of Bed. And just look up and say, I'm here. I'm ready. I'm ready. Please stay. You continue responsibly. Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Aleinu, our Father, our King, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Chanecha, our Father, our King, we have sinned against you. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol Aleinu, Yalkol Aleinu V'Tzadkenu. Our Father, our King, have compassion on us and on our children. Avinu Malkeinu, Haleiteka V'Cheret V'Raham Me'aleinu. Our Father, our King, make an end to sickness and war and famine. Avinu Malkeinu, Halein Kol Sa'al V'Maskim Me'aleinu. Our Father, our King, make an end to all oppression. Our Father, our King, Avinu Malkeinu, Havenu B'Sefer Chaim. Our Father, our King, inscribe us with blessing and our life. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Our Father, our King, with the new year, be a good year for us. Avinu Malkeinu, Amen Keren Yisrael Alecha. Our Father, our King, give strength to your people Israel. Avinu Malkeinu, Haneinu V'Aneinu, Yein Ba'al Masim Asei Imanu, Tzedakah, V'Chesed, V'Moshiach. Our Father, our King, be gracious and answer us. We have your brother. Treat us generously and with kindness. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu V'Aleinu, Ye'enu V'Asu. Asei Tzedakah V'Chesed, Asei Imanu Tzedakah V'Chesed, Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu V'Aleinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu V'Aleinu, Ye'enu Masim. Well, Shabbat Shalom and good God to the family. For a society and go on a long journey. Who would have thought that the single most controversial cultural issue to become completely politicized since we were here together last year would be this: the mask. Now, I did a survey of messages written on masks, and here are some great examples. Saw this mask that said, introvert social distancing professional. And then I saw one that said, spread love, not germs. But then I like this one. Like a good neighbor, stay over there. That's what it said. And then this one, my favorite. Oy vey. And I think oy vey sums it up. It sums up this year, it sums up this whole set of circumstances. It sums up this COVID-19 era. Oy vey. I'm not going to spend a long talking about all the oy veys. We know about these oy veys. And yet, here we are against all odds. Masked, as we should be. Socially distanced, as we should be. We've traveled here from many places. We have people joining us on Zoom. Hello, hello. We love you. Glad you're here. But what I want to point out tonight is why it really matters. Really, really matters. To begin with, history matters. So, as we're recounting, especially for those who may be joining us here at Temple Aaron for the first time, and particularly through the Zoom world, a little bit of this history. Tonight, this Jewish New Year, this Rosh Hashana, commences the 137th year of this congregation. 137th year. In 1883, the founders of Temple Aaron came here in the 1860s as Trinidad was a stop along the mountain branch, the Santa Fe Trail. And when Trinidad was first incorporated in 1876, its first mayor, Sam Jaffa, was Jewish. The congregation was named for Aaron Jaffa, Henry, Sam, and Saul's father. And this building was soon built in 1889 for the incredible sum of about $12,000. And here it has stood through the generations of time, tonight entering its 14th decade. Its 14th decade. And let's admit, at times, on the edge of disappearance. But still, here you are. And it is more important than ever. And I want you to know why this place is important, especially in the light of COVID-19. The first time I walked into this sanctuary was last Rosh Hashana. And I felt the presence of generations past gathered with us. And tonight, I feel them as well. Past, present, and future come together here. It's almost like it's a Jewish vortex of some kind. There's just something powerful here. The sages said that memory is the key to redemption. So the preservation of history and memory, certainly, it's a Jewish thing to do. And wouldn't you know it, Rosh Hashana is called in the Talmud Yom HaZikaron, the day of remembrance. On Rosh Hashana, we remember the deeds of the past year, we remember the challenges and breakthroughs. Tonight, we remember our ancestors and their stories and this story. And we try to find our place in the continuation of those stories. And let me say this too, memory in Judaism has never really been about focusing on death. I mean, you probably didn't know, but in the Talmud, a cemetery is called Beit Hayim, House of Life. Yeah, House of Life. Because in Judaism, remembering is about living. Memory is about making Memory is about finding purpose in the now. Listen, when this congregation gathered the resources to keep it from being sold, what was that really about? Was it the preservation of this place? I imagine it was certainly more than just nostalgia. It's way more than just maintaining a historic building. Because the preservation of Temple Avenue, our being here, is really profound. And I'm going to tell you why. It turns out, I heard about Temple Aaron often during my years as a rabbinical student at Hebrew College in Cincinnati. Why? Because my friend and teacher, Rabbi Dr. Jacob Marcus, was a very special, if not decisive individual in my life. And I loved him. And I think he loved me. I feel that he did. It means a lot. And he talked about Trinidad whenever he got the chance, and I don't know if you know this. And standing here on this beamer, where he and so many other rabbis who are now have stood in the high holidays for so many years, it really is a privilege for me. Dr. Marcus lived to be 99 years old, and he impacted literally thousands of American rabbis. That's why it says on the plaque downstairs, a rabbi's rabbi. He was a rabbi's rabbi to thousands. He not only created the American Jewish Archives that preserves Jewish memory in the United States, he was brilliant, iconic, artfully direct, sharply witted, and immensely kind. He was as old world as can be, and yet timeless. And tonight I want to share a very personal story about Dr. Marcus that I have never shared before. In my last year at HUC, I was the president of the Rabbinical Student Association. It's a minor detail, I assure you. But it was the tradition for the president of the RSA to serve in a special role on ordination day. And that role was to be Dr. Marcus's sidekick the day. So I spent my whole day, the day I became a rabbi, 36 years ago, with him. It was May of 1984. He was about 90 years old. His sight was dimming. His step was more tentative. He needed assistance, but his verve was unabated. And above all, his dry sense of humor was as strong as ever. So that day with Marcus, I will tell you, I will never forget. We met just before the service at Plum Street Temple, and I was wearing this very talent. It was given to me the day I became a rabbi. It's called the Rabbi's Ataran because of the way it's cut. And I was all ready for the service, and Dr. Marcus walked over to me because my talus was like this. I didn't know that, and he looked at me and he said, my boy, he called us his boys and his girls. My boy, you are all askew. What? And then he very nicely straightened out my entourage. And then he said, when you look at this from now on, remember, the four fringes should remind you of the 4,000 years of history now resting on your shoulders. And he saw me wince at the gravity of what he said. I wonder if he had a very deep voice, like I should only live 10 lifetimes to have Dr. Marcus's voice. He saw me wince at the gravity of what he said, and then he quipped. He said, look, weight. Don't be surprised if you have problems with your knees when you get to be my age. When the service was over, Dr. Marcus congratulated our entire class of newly minted rabbis one by one, and then he and I were driven in his checker cab. Did you know he owned a checker cab? Yeah, piece of Dr. Marcus trivia, which is really interesting. He bought one car in his lifetime. A checker cab. Literally a checker cab. You know the big balloon car?
Checker Manhattan.
He bought a checker cab. Why? Because he went to the car salesman and he said, how many miles will I get out of this car? And the guy said, well, he said, how many miles do you drive? He said, well, about 1,000 a year. He said, you get 100,000. He says, good, I should move to the 100. And he bought a checker cab. And he drove it all around Cincinnati. Well, on the day of ordination, he had a driver, and the driver drove us in the checker cab to the reception and the lunch, and we walked into the coat room and hung up his coat, and then he called me down. Here's what he said. He said, Rabbi, would you mind getting me some quinine? Helps with my arthritis. Now listen, ladies and gentlemen, quinine? I didn't know about quinine. What is quinine? What is this thing, quinine? I didn't know what he was talking about, quinine. And I was ashamed to ask. So I just stood there kind of like, He said, Robert, quinine just illustrates how old I am and how much you just don't know. Don't know what quinine is, huh? So after getting seated in the foyer, he said, go talk to the bartender. He'll tell you about quinine. So I sat him down, I started away, found out from the bartender that tonic water gets its twang from quinine. And I went back to him and I said, Dr. Marcus, your quinine, sir. Lesson learned. We then walked together onto the dais at the luncheon. When we sat together, and one by one, rabbis and colleagues by the dozens came up to greet him as he held court. And then he spoke to our class. And what he said that day has stayed with me right to this very moment. And I could never imagine that I would be a Temple Aaron to be able to share what he said with you. And what he said that day means more to me tonight than it ever has. And you need to know it. So this is how I remember Dr. Marcus speaking to our class, and I will admit my memory may have embellished this, but it's still all for the good. He began by saying, I know that you are all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed today. You should be. You are the future, and that's a serious thing. You have worked hard, and now you've been given the mantle of Moses and the sages to carry on the life of our people. That was nice. And then he said, and some advice from an old codger. You rabbis, he said, are notoriously much too worried about the number of people that come to your temples. You know, this is an American thing, this preoccupation with buildings and memberships and the size of things. Do yourself a favor, he said. If you insist on counting the people who show up to services and obsess that this is the measure of your success, well then, don't count heads, count feet. Don't count heads, count feet. You'll feel better. And I can tell you the entire room laughed hysterically for a moment, and then became silent as Dr. Marcus lifted his hand and he pointed to heaven and he said, but just remember, there are are only two numbers that count. First is the number 1, for the one God. And it is the one God that brought us here to begin with. And it is the one God that brings us here now. And it is the one God that will always bring us here. And guess what? He said it to us then, and through me, he's saying it to you now. That's why we're here. He says, rabbis, as long as you teach this, our people will survive. Even with all the many ways of explaining this one God, this eternal idea, there is one unifying force in all existence. And that is what we Jews bring to the world. That idea. The idea of God as a spiritual unity at the heart of life will show up in every good religion and be lost in every bad religion. He said, those who will use God to try to divide us, they are just plain wrong. He said, the other number that matters is 10. 10 for the million. 10 for the community. Just 10. It could be 10 naysayers, 10 non-believers, 10 pioneers on the Santa Fe Trail, 10 pious people. It doesn't matter. There is no litmus test of faith in Judaism. 10 people is all it takes, and your job is to bring just 10 people hope. Not hundreds, not thousands. So stop, if you would, the self-serving counting of the people in your pews. Spend your lives as rabbis making people count. 1 in 10, those numbers have real value, and I know this to be true, and I've seen it with my own eyes. And this is the part that's for you. He said, I have witnessed this in a little place called Trinidad, Colorado. Up there is a Temple Aaron, a beautiful old temple with a small but mighty group of devoted Jews. Theirs is anything but the mega temple that you all think you're supposed to aspire to. Their Jewish life is as humble and as authentic as it gets. Sometimes they can barely muster a million, but they are faithful, and they are the ones keeping Judaism alive. They taught me that the Jewish future is actually really preserved in the small, hidden, humble, remote places of Jewish determination. They are, he said, and the words have echoed in my life since that moment. He said, those people, are God's saving remnant of Israel. And then he quoted Micah. Micah said it, I will surely assemble you. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together like sheep in a small fold, like a flock in the midst of a small pasture. The Hebrew is Shelit Yisrael, the remnant of Israel, and it's always been the remnant of Israel that's made the difference between our surviving and disappearing. We've always risen to the occasion when life is challenging, and the remnants are the ones who rise first. Dr. Marcus concluded, again reminding us about the power of the remnant, quoting Jeremiah. I will gather the remnants of my flock, Jeremiah said, and I will bring them back, time and time again. And Jeremiah then said, and I will place shepherds over them who will tend them, and they will no longer be afraid or terrorized. And Dr. Marcus looked at us and he said, you are the shepherds of God's choosing. So carry the staff and wear the mantle and be humble. And then you'll be remembered for remembering the remnant. And then he sat down and lifted up his glass of wine, and he drank it down, and he smiled. And we all stood there with tears in our eyes, feeling truly blessed that day. And it's important on this Rosh Hashana that you know that the blessing he gave us on that day in 1984 is rooted here. It's rooted here in this very spot. And you should know that tonight it comes full circle. The Temple Aaron, you are the saving remnant, especially now in COVID-19. You know, this Rosh Hashana, again, this year the Jews were tested again. We know about this. We've been through plagues, cataclysms, traumas, Holocaust, and yet we survive. We have overcome more obstacles in history than just about anyone. And yet again, we are reinventing ourselves, staying rooted because of the saving remnants once again. Here we are being resilient once again. And this is not the first Rosh Hashana this congregation has faced challenges, nor the first Rosh Hashana that Jews around the world have faced challenges. This is not the first time we've had to contort and create and adapt. This is not the first time we've had to be tenacious. Because we've always survived because of the saving remnant and our ability to rise as we always do. You know, now is just not normal. There's nothing more contrary to essential life as a Jew than to hug, to kiss, to sing, to dance, and yes, to eat together. To sit closely together at a table and eat, and sing, and argue the issues of the day. To hold hands, to give each other pats on the back, to shout nafas in person, and to be able to cry in person. So right now it feels so unnatural. And I want to say to you tonight, to bring these words to a close. Temple Aaron, there are just 40 of us here, masked and careful, and everyone joining from afar. We're not just preserving memory tonight, we're creating memory tonight. And that's why you matter so much. I hope that when COVID-19 ends, life will be more meaningful, people will be that much more loving, people will recognize the fragility of life that much more, people will be more inclusive and accepting, people will be kinder and more compassionate, people will exchange long and enduring hugs and show ear-to-ear smiles. And God willing, we will also recognize what Dr. Marcus said, the unity of God in the unity of humanity. So you know, we usually say next year in Jerusalem, I have a more modest hope. Next year, let's just aim to lovingly sit side by side at one grand table, eating kugel and gefilte fish, saying to each other, as our ancestors have said many times, guess what? We made it. As usual, we made it. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom. Amen.
Now we're going to continue with the Misha Barak prayer, the prayer for healing. We've been asked to mention Maggie Lowe, who is recovering, and invite anyone else if you'd like to add the name. Someone to included in our prayer for healing, if you just say aloud for us.
Lily Paul.
We share our Lord. We won't take you. May the source of strength bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. Let us say, Amen. We share in our evil. Let's go in need of healing with refuge and the renewal of life, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I ask you please to turn to page 71, and please stand if you are able for the page. Remain standing for the Albania, page 43. When shall be out, like all our I take you by the separate sheet. Show us something in our souls. They will somehow reach the heart of the heart. Show us something in my head. They go around you, they hold on down. We are not for you. We shall from you, Lord. Page 44. Page 45. At this sacred moment, we turn our thoughts to those who have gone from life. We recall the joy of their companionship. We feel pain had intensely grieved from first their death lay before our stricken eyes. Now we know that they will never vanish, so long as heart and thought remain within us. By love they are remembered, and in memory they live. O God, grant that their memory may bring strength and blessing. May the nobility in their lives and the high ideals they cherished endure in our thoughts and live on in our deeds. They will carry on their work, help to redeem your promise that life shall yet prevail. Shabbat, we remember Joseph ben Moshe, Ellen Magnuson Levinson, Alma Solomon Levinson, and Rosa Frank Solomon. I'm sad to share with you that early this evening, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has also passed away. Just before dinner time. I'd like to invite anyone else, if you'd like, please share the name of someone you would like to remember during our Kaddish prayer for this new year.
Emil Paul.
Please let us join together now with the words hallowed by centuries of faith. Yikadal, Yikadash, Shemir, Yalmai, Tuvra, Cherote, Yamrech Machute, Uchayecho, Yomecho, Uchaye, Bechol Beit Yisrael, Ma'olah, Yisman Kari, Yibru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba V'Korach, Le'olam U'Lamei Amen. Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yipar, Yitramam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalal, Shei Kusha, Le'Rihu. Le'Lam, Yikol, Yerchata, Yishiata, Tushbachata, Nechemata, Tamiran, Yalma, Yimru.
Amen.
Yehi Shlomo, Rabba, Yishmaya, Achayim Aleinu, Yalkol, Yisrael, Yimru. Amen. Oseh Shalom, Yimam, Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, Yalkol, Yisrael, Yimru. May God send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Together we say, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Yimam. Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, Yalkol, Yisrael, Yimru. Yaseh Shalom,
Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu,
Yalkol Yisrael,
Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu,
Yalkol Yisrael. Good Yontif. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you all for joining.
Please stay for the Holy Shabbat. We'll be having honey cake this week by Nina. And enjoy yourselves. It'll be outside on a cell lawn. Thank you for being here.
Turn her off. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shabbat.
10 o'clock tomorrow.
How are you?
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for having me. Sorry I didn't make it down there.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to
Good
see
night,
you.
everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's
Good
wonderful.
to see you. Good to see you too.
Maggie, I hope you're feeling a little better.
Getting there.
You're muted. I guess I should unmute people.
Yeah, well, it's good to see you all. Miss you
Oh
being
my
there.
goodness.
Miss being down there.
Unmute. If you'd like to unmute, I'll chat for a few minutes. Kat, it's nice to see you.
Hi, it's nice to meet you guys. I'm sorry I didn't make
There's
it,
a lot of
but
unfamiliar faces.
John, or
Good to
something
see
is
you.
out on my
Face to the
truck.
name. Donna, how are you?
I am doing well.
Chris,
Miss
I know
being
you're there
down
somewhere,
there.
but I can't see your face.
I miss being there. Of course,
I hope you all were able to hear enough during the service.
well,
Yeah.
little needs work, but the organ was
We're
beautiful.
all going to go outside for an oneg. So I'm going to turn off the Zoom.
Okay.
I can't hear you, John, if
Thank
you're
you.
speaking. You can unmute.
Shabbat shalom. I wish you all well. I'll
Hold
tune
on.
in tomorrow too.
Ask all to unmute. Oh, here we go. Allow you to unmute.
All right.
Now you're
Shabbat-
allowed.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Look, it was a wonderful service, just spectacular. It made,
Hold on. Okay. Now, can you hear me now? Can I hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Thank you for hanging in there with our
Overall, we can hear pretty well. I put on headphones, and that helped a lot.
yeah. There's a lot of echoing in the synagogue here.
Yeah, I remember.
The whole thing was done with an iPhone, so certainly not ideal, but
Yeah.
the budget allowed.
The organ was beautiful.
Yeah.
Really well.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
was. It was. Well, you played it first,
you,
Donna.
guys.
You were the first to play it in decades, I think.
Wow.
She did really good because I know the sticky ones up there. So she did good.
She did.
Yeah.
Maggie, I didn't get to hear you. How are you feeling?
I'm getting there. I'm improving each day, I think.
Oh,
Well,
But
Maggie,
I've still got some ways to go.
Maggie, I didn't know you were sick.
Yeah, I was in the hospital. I had a abdominal abscess, and they had to put in this kind of drain thing. It's the and
Oh.
stuff. So
Oh.
and I was sick for about 2 weeks before I got that point. So we're kind of slow and easy. And plus, I had some anemia and a few things, and had to have blood transfusions and a bunch of
Oh. Bless
other
your heart.
stuff.
Sure.
I'll
we're
put
checking
some
your
prayer
head
time.
here,
I'll light a candle for you and put some prayer time.
Please, thank you.
Donna. Well, Kat, nice to
I'm
see
gonna
you.
go. I appreciate it. Just so
Bye, honey.
people know who I am. I'm from United Hebrew Center in Pueblo. I live in Canyon, and we weren't gonna have services for Rosh Hashana. We just couldn't pull it together. So I was invited to come down, and then my truck broke down. But I'm here on Zoom, and I appreciate the invite. And the organ was just lovely. I
Beautiful.
just
Well, thank you for joining. I'm glad you
Yeah.
could.
so
And
maybe I'll see
honey.
everybody tomorrow again.
Yes.
All right,
Awesome.
bye.
Good night,
Bye.
Kat.
Hey, guess who I saw? Guess who I saw?
Who?
Shimon Mach.
Oh, yes. I know
Yeah.
he just moved to Florida.
He went to Florida, but I saw him before he left. So it was nice to say hi to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, I am going to turn this off because I have to head down to the oneg and help out down there.
Well, thank you for
Sorry.
doing this. It made it really nice to be able to be part of things. So thank
That's
you.
right. Yes.
Oh, well, thank you for joining.
Shabbat
So,
shalom from Denver.
I'm sorry, Louis, say it again.
Shabbat shalom, good yontif from Denver.
Shabbat
I've
shalom.
been both to services at Temple Micah Zoom this evening, and thought I should enjoy this as well, and I have.
I'm glad.
Glad it came together.
Yeah, me
Be
too.
well.
I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, Donna. See you later.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye. See you in the morning.
Okay, great.
Hold on. Hold on. Oh.